Change the Channel podcast listeners. My name is Megan Grace, and I am your host of Change the Channel podcast. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for joining me again. On this episode, the conversation is about something that's really special to me personally. So names matter. What you're called matters. The way that people know you often is by your name. So I went into Starbucks and had this moment just chatting with the barista, letting her know what it was that I wanted, and had made my order. And there's holiday beverages back out again. I am a sucker for holiday flavors. I'm a sucker for holiday advertisement at the places. I'm nearly positive if someone has painted a picture and it's somehow different than the regular menu, that my coffee is going to change my day in a different way. I was having this conversation with the barista, and we got to the point in the transaction where she asked me, "What is your name?" And I told her my name is Megan, and she asked, "Well, what spelling is it?" And that's a whole other sidebar conversation. I'm sorry. This may alienate some listeners, but why are there so many ways of spelling the name Megan? My name is beautiful. I love it. And it's kind of a simple name, but it becomes very complex when people are concerned about spelling. And I was talking to her about it. We were just kind of having a haphazard moment about it. And I said, yeah, gosh, nope. My way is just nice and simple, 5 letters, that kind of thing. And she goes, yeah. Well, I was totally that jerk mom that named my kid Morgan and spelled it with a Y and an extra N and all this stuff. And she was kind of laughing to herself about it. And she goes, they say something, just telling me about her kid. And I go, that's interesting. Why did you pick that spelling? And the look on her face shifted, and she said, well, it's the Gaelic spelling, and that has some family history to it. And she goes, I wanted my kid to be able to have a choice to let me know who they are. And so she goes, I wanted it to be a little bit kind of gender neutral, but I also just love the name Morgan. And kind of picked up on as she was sharing about her kid, and well, you did use they, them pronouns for your kiddo. Does your kiddo identify as non-binary? And she goes, yeah, absolutely. And I go, well, then could it be then instead of you being quote unquote, that jerk mom that made things complicated with your kid, could it be potentially that you were an intuitive mother that was already looking out for your kiddo, even as they just come into the world, their first breath, their first days, picking their name? You knew that you were bringing someone into the world that would need that type of support. She said, that's beautiful. That's a different kind of mothering. And the look on her face, she shifted from, oh, we're having this cheeky conversation, to I might burst into tears in a moment. And she just goes, that is so sweet. Thank you so much for recognizing that, or for calling that to my attention. I never thought about that before. And as we were talking more, she just said, it was telling me more about her kid. And in that moment, I realized if I hadn't asked even just one simple expounding question, I would have missed out on this beautiful story about this amazing human being. Her kid sounded incredible. And then I started telling her a little bit about just my time working in the schools. I used to be a graduation success coach. It's probably one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. And I got to work with kids when I was living in North Pole, Alaska, that were in middle school, and they were showing signs that school and graduation wasn't something on the forefront of their minds. And so my pleasure actually wasn't even a job, was to spend time with these kids, get to know them, get to know their stories, and get to know their parents. Which, okay, done. That's exactly what I want to be spending my time doing. And so I let this mom know that what I had noticed and observed in my students are the kids that knew that their parents were paying attention to who they truly are, listened to the story of them that was coming forward, were the ones that seemed to do better, the ones that seemed to feel more supported, the ones that felt free to be themselves. And school and life was a little bit easier for them, it seemed. There was a little more flow, a little less fear. And with that, I noticed bravery in my 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And so we were talking a little bit about how even just the spelling choice that this mother intentionally made as her baby was just fresh into the world had set up almost this slight verbal, but almost nonverbal communication that that feeling of, I see you. I accept you exactly as you are. And I've given you almost my stamp of approval to show up in this world in the bold way that you choose and that feels most aligned to you. And I loved that. I was realizing, number one, kind of the change the channel moment for me in this was sometimes just asking one additional clarifying question can open up a beautiful interaction with somebody else. I could have just as easily said, this is my name, this is how it's spelled, gone about my day. It would have been no harm, no foul. But I opened up a little bit more about my own feelings about how my name is spelled. And then that allowed her to share back. So a friend of mine had said before, oftentimes when we share vulnerably, if we give people the gift of going second when we actually share. So when you're thinking with that inside feeling of, should I tell this story? Is it going to be too much? Would it be better if I kept it to myself? I'm not trying to bother this person behind the counter. Why would I extrapolate on any of the rest of the stuff? We can just sit here in silence. Perhaps just think about if you choose, and if the vibe feels good, of course, being able to just ask that one extra conversation starter moment that allows that person to go from being a worker behind the counter to being a person with a story. And when you decide to initiate first, it gives that person the gift of going second to be able to share a little bit more about themselves. And so in that moment, we weren't just exchanging coffee. We weren't just exchanging money. We were exchanging moments of humanity, shared by two people going about their lives. I was so grateful for that moment. I was so grateful for this mom. I was so grateful to know that there's parents out there that are being so intentional about the way that they raise their kids. And I was so grateful that I got to be a fly on the wall, hearing this mom light up and visualize this mom light up about her kiddo. So the takeaways from this change the channel moment is, number one, potentially ask one more question than you usually do. Be a little bit more curious about the people that are around you. Allow yourself to get swept up in someone else's story for a minute. It's amazing where it will take you. A little bit of curiosity, a little bit of open body and open heart stance to ask those questions and make that space can take you on a wild ride with a really fun moment with a stranger. And the next thing is the sharing first gives people the gift of going second. So instead of keeping our things to ourselves, instead of keeping everything bottled up, you could be the moment in someone else's life that allows them to open up and share something and feel seen and visible, potentially in a day that they really needed that. And all it takes is a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of leaning in and changing the channel of, this is just a quick interaction, I'm in and out, to I'm dealing with another human being that's on the other side of this counter. And this interaction matters. This interaction matters because this is the interaction I'm having at the moment. And I get a chance to change the channel in that person's day as well. Thank you so much again for listening, for tuning in. Hopefully you had a cup of coffee in your hands or have been properly caffeinated today, because we all know that that is an important part of the Change the Channel fam. And with that, take this moment, take this time, go about your life, and be changing the channel for yourself and those around you. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you next week.